Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Nigel Frank webinar on hiring dynamic staff, what thousands of professionals are telling us will improve your acquisition and retention. My name is Michael Day, Senior Vice President here at Nigel Frank. Every year, we survey thousands of professionals of all levels across the Dynamics ecosystem to find out what makes them tick and keep our finger firmly on the pulse in terms of market trends. This is the most comprehensive independent survey of Microsoft professionals anywhere in the world. And while it puts us in a great position to advise Dynamics professionals on what they need to be doing to stand out from their peers, it also offers leaders a fascinating glimpse into how organizations can best handle the talent they have within and gives them the edge when it comes to hiring. This webinar will go through some of the key takeaways from this year's survey and what that means for you as an employer. All right, so let's begin by telling you a little bit about ourselves. I've been in the technology space for over 20 years. I began my career with a startup software business, and after 8 years left to join Ernst & Young's IT audit and security practice, which was the complete other end of the spectrum. I then needed to find a balance of the corporate and entrepreneurial, so I ended up at Robert Half Technology, which was the beginning of my staffing career 13 years ago. I've been focused on technology staffing ever since, and I joined Nigel Frank 8 months ago to lead our permanent placement business across the US and Canada. Chloe, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. So my name is Chloe Gordon. I'm the Vice President at Nigel Frank. A little bit about me. I'm originally from the north of England, and I'm currently based in Dallas, Texas. My staffing career started 6 years ago when I joined Nigel Frank International. I've recruited within all the Dynamics suite of products, and I've helped hundreds of clients and candidates within the Dynamics and Microsoft ecosystem find fantastic positions and candidates. My current responsibilities include managing our Nigel Frank division that specializes in temporary and contract staffing for Microsoft Dynamics, Modern Workplace, and Azure across the US.
And this is what we'll run through today. I'll tell you a little bit about Nigel Frank, then go through how we compiled a salary survey before moving into our key findings rather in more detail. There will also be an opportunity to ask any questions you have at the end of the presentation. So if there's anything you'd like to ask as we go along, please make a note of it or put it into the chat box and we'll answer them all at the end. So, I'm sure if you've managed to find this webinar, you already know a little bit about us. For those of you who don't, here's a quick overview as to who we are and what Nigel Frank does. So firstly, we're a dedicated Microsoft recruitment company. We don't work with any other technology, which is quite unique in the staffing market. Day in, day out, we work solely recruiting Microsoft professionals. We live and breathe this ecosystem. We understand it better than any other recruitment firm on the planet. Since 2006, we've placed Microsoft professionals across more than 21,000 different organizations. So no matter what sector you're in, what size organization you are, we have experience with your situation and we can match you with the right talent. From SME and enterprise customers to ISVs and partners, we know the marketplace better than anyone. We have more than 500 consultants working across the globe. Over 150 of them are multilingual, actually, and working only with Microsoft Dynamics. That's more than 10 times the size of our nearest competitor. We have 17 offices across 8 countries in 4 different continents. So we don't just know your market, we're a global operation. And what does that mean for you? That reach and investment in marketing has resulted in us having the largest database of Microsoft professionals in the world, with over 370,000 available Microsoft candidates. And not only that, but our website receives more than 125,000 visits each month from job seekers, and we have 11,000 subscribers who receive our daily jobs by email. We advertise more Dynamics roles across more channels than any other agency, giving your job and your business maximum exposure. Last year, as an example, a candidate attended a job interview arranged by Nigel Frank every 12 minutes. In short, we're pretty well positioned to advise you on the job marketplace when it comes to dynamics. All right, as I mentioned earlier, our salary survey is the largest independent resource of Microsoft professionals anywhere on the planet. For 12 years now, we've surveyed people working within the Dynamics ecosystem of all levels to gauge their thoughts, their feelings on a number of issues that affect them, that motivate and demotivate them, as well as taking anonymized salary information so that we can get the most accurate picture of what people working with Dynamics around the world are earning and should be earning. In total, we actually analyze over 239,000 data points to be able to present this to you. So it's not just something we hastily put together by any means. This is an industry-leading resource based on the responses of those on the front lines. And while this is really useful information for candidates to determine their worth and see where they can look to improve when entering the job market, for employers, it's invaluable. It gives an unrivaled insight when it comes to salary benchmarking. But, it also provides a really clear view of what you can be doing better in order to not just attract talent into your organization, but also retain it. All right, so with this in mind, here are some of the key findings we've discovered that will affect you when it comes to hiring staff. Perhaps most importantly, let's start off by looking at job satisfaction. What makes Dynamics professionals happy or unhappy with their employers? And perhaps the standout thing is that only 65% of people told us that overall they're satisfied with their job. While we think the scores for work-life balance and working hours could be higher, I think the likelihood is that as we approach the new normal, so to speak, that will be addressed quite organically, and those figures will rise. What that means then is that things such as training and development become huge win areas where you can turn demotivated staff who may be looking at opportunities elsewhere into employees who are looking to develop and improve, and in turn, perhaps have an eye on career progression. Most importantly, that progression is with you. The professionals that we work with tend to be quite motivated people with a genuine passion for the platform. If you consider that most of them have studied a STEM subject at university levels before then specializing in Dynamics after that, these are people who have genuine interest and thirst to increase their knowledge. They want to get their fingernails dirty, so to speak, trying new things and really mastering each new product, update or upgrade that's available. This knowledge doesn't just benefit them, so facilitating this learning and development means you have a better standard of professional on your books. Paying for certifications is one of the best ways of doing this. 68% of employers covered the cost of certifications for their employees last year, with another 9% partially contributing towards them. So if you're not making any contribution at all towards employee certifications, then you're actually in the minority, and it's a big source of dissatisfaction. If you're not in a position to contribute, allowing time for your team to study during their working hours is one way of helping to bridge this. But what is certain is that if you don't encourage and facilitate learning, people will become demotivated. And teams with that fractious attitude either struggle to produce results or seek the exit, and obviously neither are good for you and your organization. If you do, on the other hand, pay towards certifications already, be aware that it can be a huge selling point for a candidate during the interview process. It might not be the main headline, but worth noting that it's an attractive part of your overall package and can help attract talent. And again, in terms of retention, giving employees a clear pathway and vision for their development keeps them with you longer. If they're looking at their next certification or product they could be working with, then they aren't looking at the exit. And if their eyes are ahead, you're all winning. If you're interested in the specific certifications people are studying for, they're covered in the survey itself in much greater detail, including the impact they'll have on salary. For instance, only 28% of those who pass certifications noticed a direct increase in salary afterwards. Okay, if you're still unsure, this is precisely why certifications matter. As you can see from the table here, 28% of Dynamics professionals feel they are held back by a lack of support. Another 28% would struggle to complete the training outside of work hours, which tells a lot about their motivation. And 26% are put off by the cost implications. 28% don't know where to start. And 13% of Dynamics professionals are concerned about maintaining a healthy work-life balance while undertaking certifications. One of the biggest ways to make sure your team has the skills internally is by committing to supporting their learning. An easy strategy is to carve out a set period of time, for instance, during the work week, to allow your team to dedicate themselves to upskilling or learning. This won't cost you anything as a business, but addresses many of the challenges highlighted above. And in terms of cost, however, you can see that most employers are investing financially in their staff's development. And while many companies often have clear career progression plans, do you also have a clear learning and development plan? Is this easy for your employees to access? Do they know what sort of support is available to them? And are they expected to pay for the training themselves, or does your company contribute towards these costs? Is there an incentive for them to pursue a certification in terms of an increased salary or greater promotion prospects? These are all the questions you should be asking yourselves as employers, because these are the very questions we're hearing from your employees. Okay, we expect to see a significant rise in these numbers next year, primarily due to the increase in people seeking to use their time during lockdown or on furlough to advance their certifications. So it's worth being aware as an employer that Dynamics staff without some level of certification are going to become more and more in the minority, which makes it even more imperative to support your staff in becoming certified. Where in the last slide, a lot of people said they feel they don't need to get certifications, a large number of professionals will just have more time next year, and they'll be able to continue to study their pathway. If you aren't helping your staff and promoting the training and development opportunities you offer, then you simply aren't going to be an attractive option. When it comes to retaining staff, then look at the number of employees who experience a pay increase to reflect their standing within the Azure community. Being in that top 28% of employers is going to ensure staff feel appreciated and will drive them on to achieve more. All right, next slide, please, and let me pass things over to Chloe.
Thanks, Mike. So why are people leaving you? If you take out the financial option, which, let's be honest, is why 99% of us are here primarily, I think this is a really telling snapshot of the Dynamics ecosystem in terms of being full of really hungry, passionate professionals who want to develop, want to improve, who have all the soft skills that you really desire when putting teams together. People want to be challenged. They want a company to have a strategy and one that they can see themselves being a part of. They want to work with the latest products. And any company offering that is one that, generally speaking, has a strong culture and working environment. Obviously, this is a much more complex one to give you an easy answer to, but look at how you reward and progress high informers and make sure there's a clear route of development. It's such a simple thing to overlook, but make sure that you're having regular one-to-ones with people to find out how they're developing, how they want to develop. Ask how you can support them. Let them know that you're invested in them. You don't have to be a psychic and try and figure out what's going on beneath the surface. An employee in the right sort of working environment should feel comfortable talking to you about where they see themselves progressing. It's a self-fulfilling answer in that sense. Although an office location might be a difficult one to create a fix for, if you think in terms of offering remote work figures right next to them, then you sort of have a potential answer. One thing we have found as companies shift their remote working policies now is that candidates are willing to make longer commutes if it's only once or twice a week. In that sense, it's definitely worth looking at the benefits you offer, which we'll move on to now. I'm also aware that despite all of this, some of you will still be looking at the number one answer of a higher salary and being a bit panicky. So with that in mind, I do have some reassuring news, which is that what happened when we asked those who weren't currently currently employed what they were looking for in their next job. As you can see here, the remuneration on offer ranks much lower down on the list of priorities if somebody isn't already employed. Obviously, in the current climate, people want somewhere that feels secure, but their goals are definitely more focused on a human element. What progression opportunities are there? What will they actually be contributing? What are the company's core values? It's something we see so much of within Dynamics, and particularly in the younger generation coming through. People don't just simply want to clock in and clock out. They're invested in what they do and they want to feel like they're making a tangible contribution. So when you're hiring, don't just look at the position that the person will be filling. Make sure there's an opportunity for them to grow with you and the difference that they'll be making. So don't just talk about the tech requirements for the role, but discuss the impact that this will have on your organization, the pain point it fixes, how it can help you, and importantly, what's next. If you're hiring someone and selling them a long-term vision of what they'll be doing, then you're automatically setting expectations of the time frame they subconsciously expect to be with you. And while I think the next slide is probably subject to a lot of movement as the answers were taken pre-pandemic, I think it's definitely worth us quickly looking at the responses to see what makes people consider moving from contract work to permanent work, which 52% of respondents said they consider even prior to COVID-19. So, understandably, before the world was turned on its head, remuneration was the key factor here. But the rest of this list is really interesting reading. Firstly, job security and a stable income feature in the top 10 reasons a contractor would consider a permanent move, which will understandably be a more attractive proposition in the current climate. But beyond that, look at the list of what a contractor would want from you, and it adds further weight to what you need to offer to get the edge on your peers. Career progression, visibility that the work that they'll be doing makes a difference, as well as a generous benefits package, which, as we'll see, doesn't always come down to finances. There's no getting away from some of your hiring and acquisition being down to investment, but a little thinking outside the box can truly give you an edge. Another area that this highlighted is benefits, which we'll look at now. So we'll begin with what Dynamics professionals already tend to receive. It's a good starting point looking at what employers tend to offer compared to what employees actually want. Even before the pandemic started, home working and flexible hours was something that companies that were generally offering to ensure a better work-life balance. It's becoming more and more important to professionals, and in the light of the recent taster we've all had from flexible working arrangements, this is going to increase even further. That's not to say that every employee wants that. We've all coped differently being stuck at home, using the kitchen as the office, working with our families present, and combining our day jobs with being caregivers and teachers. But as life goes back to normal, many people won't want to go back to the commute. They will value the time they've spent with their family, and for many more, it will be a hybrid of the two. We'll look at how remote working has traditionally been managed pre-COVID in a moment. But what is clear is that even before the pandemic, talented Dynamics professionals generally had that flexibility, and now everyone has had a taste of it. The demand for it is only going to be, increasing rather than decreasing. So if we compare to the benefits that would prompt someone to move on, the picture kind of changes. While a bonus may come out as the most attractive benefit, if you're looking at your budget and wondering, how am I going to manage that? Remember, it doesn't have to be cold hard cash. It could be gift cards, PTOs, or even tech equipment. However, it's telling that a bonus comes out on top. As I mentioned earlier, in terms of the soft skills of candidates and that hunger to perform to the best of their ability, it suggests to us that Dynamics professionals are willing to be incentivized. And I think that's a great thing for the ecosystem, to be filled with a workforce that has its confidence in its ability to deliver the goods for employers. Rewarding that is obviously a great way to attract and retain talent. It's also interesting how highly home working was valued. even before the pandemic. It's not just a nice to have, but it's something that can genuinely be the difference between someone accepting a job offer and potentially looking to move on. Again, with everyone, having had the taste of home working during lockdown restrictions, I predict that this will increase even further when it comes to next year's survey. So with that in mind, let's have a look at how remote working tends to work on a practical level. I'm aware that if you didn't offer any home working option previously, it can be intimidating trying to get your head around managing a virtual team. The reality of it seems to be that very few Dynamics teams are made up of teams 100% offsite. The vast majority only work a couple of days a week from home or elsewhere. So while 70% of our respondents enjoyed some form of remote working, they still spent more of their week at work than at home. What that really shows is that if you're new to offering remote work as an option, it doesn't necessarily mean having to learn how to manage a virtual team on a permanent basis. Many employers need the social element that an office environment brings, having that face-to-face interaction with colleagues, and some simply don't have an appropriate setup at home to facilitate full-time working. But having the option to work at least some of your week from home allows for a much better work-life balance, whether it's avoiding a day of commuting, spending a little longer in bed, or even just being able to attend a sports class or do the school run. Having that option is important. It's also worth noting that when it comes to working full-time from home, this option is more popular with women than it is for men, which is something that we've seen replicated in other surveys across different technologies. As women tend to be the primary caregivers for young children, it makes remote working a vital part of any job package they're offered. What we all know, however, is that the makeup of men compared to women in the industry is still very much skewed towards male. The sector can do a lot better in terms of diversity. What this means in terms of acquisition is that having an employment package on offer that attracts women will give you the edge to attracting those applicants. There's a range of things you can do besides that, such as gender neutral wording in your job ads, but offering a working pattern that will allow a parent the chance to combine the school runs with their full-time job will make your organisation much more attractive to that demographic. There's also an infinite number of reasons why someone may not be able to or want to commute or be in an office situation for 8 or 9 hours a day, but are still perfectly capable of carrying out the job at an incredibly high standard. So it might not be high on the list of things that will make someone want to join you, but it will attract a much wider range of applicants to the role and thus give you an access to an untapped pool of talent. It's really one of the great secrets we've discovered when it comes to trying to draw interest beyond the usual resumes. Digging into talent pools that your competitors aren't in is one of the easiest ways to give you an advantage when trying to attract talent into your organization. So just to quickly recap, the plus side is there is goodwill from employees towards their employers at the moment. So do be aware that the way you handle your teams now will be remembered when we get through this, which seems to be getting closer and closer as schools, gyms and pubs all begin to reopen and life gradually gets back to normal. So you might not have the budget to facilitate investment in certifications or shiny new benefits, but think outside the box. Make sure people are getting the support they need at this moment in time. People already wanted the option to work from home, and having had a taste of it this year, a lot of people will not want to go back into the office permanently. Smarter companies aren't just seeing how this pans out in the medium term, they're putting strategies in place right now. Not many organizations are in the position to be increasing pay right now, but having flexible working arrangements available will give you an incredibly strong position as we ride these waters. So don't just think about return to work, think about the long term and how you can facilitate this change and market to your staff now. Second, invest in your training. Whether that's time or money, you need to buy into your team's professional development. I hope what I've shown you today has given you a snapshot of the sector that's filled with incredibly hungry, ambitious and knowledgeable individuals. And there's only one way to satisfy that desire. Allowing your teams the room to grow is perhaps the number one way to ensure you're doing your best to improve your retention. And lastly, look at how what's on offer might attract different applicants to the role. This year has taught us a great deal in terms of how we can and want to fit work around our personal lives and circumstances. Offering as much flexibility to accommodate that will put you in such a strong position to attract candidates that simply aren't applying for roles with your competitors, putting you in a much stronger position to hire talent that is otherwise being overlooked. So that's it from me today. We're happy to take questions that any of you may have. Anything we're unable to answer, we would be happy to connect with you individually and get back to you with an answer away from the presentation. Our contact details are going to be displayed in a moment if you wish to connect with us privately. But before we move on to that, I just wanted to make you aware that the full survey is available completely free of charge from our website, www.nigelfrank.com. It's under market reports in the header there. And I should also mention our dynamic-specific white paper aimed at helping Microsoft business customers to use the platform to help them through the current period. It's free of charge and includes a wealth of information and expertise from business leaders and platform experts, including a number of Microsoft MVPs. It's a really great resource for this moment in time and even beyond that. But you'll find the salary survey in this section of the website. And again, it's completely free of charge to download and goes into much more detail than we've been able to cover during this short presentation. There's a comprehensive city-by-city salary breakdown for the various roles across the dynamic spectrum, which beyond the insights I've shared with you is an invaluable tool when it comes to either salary benchmarking or simply knowing how much you should be offering your next hire. So now we're going to move on to answer any questions that you may have.
Does anyone have any questions? So one of the questions that we did get is this relevant to the European markets, given that over 50% of the data that we've shown you comes from the US? The answer to that is, in both cases, we want to emphasize that the results aren't just based on quantitative data, but also qualitative interviews. So where we have smaller samples, we're really confident that these are an accurate reflection of the ecosystem and those working within it. Okay, so another question that we have had prior to the presentation was if COVID has changed the hiring cycle. So what we found is that it's much, much faster now. It's reduced from an average of around 6 weeks to around 4. That is from a client first registering a job to successfully placing a candidate with them ultimately, which is about a 33% reduction in time. Interviews now average around 2 stages, and unlike before, they can be done on Zoom, Teams, AWS, Chime, whatever it might be. So the turnaround tends to be a lot quicker, and the process is a lot easier for everyone. Around 82% of the placements that we've made within the last quarter involved no face-to-face interviews at all. So that's quite a staggering increase. But the companies have confidence in us and that they need to get the access to the talent quicker. You can also hire from a much wider pool of talent now with remote teams. More than 9 out of 10 of the clients we've placed with have told us that the opportunity will be there to work remotely 100% of the time for the rest of 2020. So that's really attractive to potential candidates. If you need talent quickly, which about 68% of our clients have told us that they're likely to rehire again within the next 3 months due to the increase in demand, particularly for cloud professionals, then a remote team will definitely give you the opportunity to attract even more applicants, meaning better quality candidates available to you as well.
Thanks, Chloe. Another question that was asked before was, what actionable steps can an employer take to improve diversity in their tech teams? I think diversity is a key topic for everybody today. So, while recruitment is one area to focus on, retention is another hugely underrated area that you can look at. It's no good trying to just open up the hiring process when you don't have an inclusive place to work. The quit or resignation rate for women in tech is exceptionally high. For instance, if you don't have the culture where every member of the workforce feels comfortable and can thrive, contribute and flourish, then no matter how you change your hiring process, you'll have the same end problem. Make sure you're listening to feedback from employees and action it. You don't know better than them. It isn't just their opinion. Every concern is a valid one. I'd recommend creating a culture where feedback is welcomed and there's opportunity to do it, perhaps off the shop floor, as we call it, away from peers. That's obviously going to give an easier moment now, especially with more teams being based remotely, that more confidential conversation could be had. We've seen a lot of success from businesses doing a monthly one-to-one via Zoom or Teams, which will give every employee ample opportunity to speak in a confidential manner. I would obviously be happy to connect individually and suggest different steps that you can take in terms of hiring, looking at things like gender neutral wording on job ads, for example, I think is key, but I think making sure you're doing better in terms of retention is something that is often missed.
So I can see that we've got a question in from Adim. Thanks, Adim. So the question is, what chance do people with 3-month notice periods have if the recruitment cycle is shorter? So when we're talking about the recruitment cycle being shorter, notice periods aren't really coming into this. So if, for example, a lot of countries in Europe, people do have a 3-month notice period, and I know within some companies within the US and the UK, they do have those longer notice periods. Really, what an employer, a client is looking for is someone who can begin their interview and accept an offer within a shorter space of time. That doesn't necessarily include the notice period. So if a client is having to wait 3 months, for a notice period of a great candidate, I think they're more than happy to do that. That's what we've been seeing. It's just that the recruitment cycle from when they begin their kind of interviews or their resume or CV is sent to the client, until the offer is accepted, then that's what we're talking about. Okay, and then we've had another question. I work with remote teams outside of Europe with new remote working, not needing people to be in the office. How likely will companies start looking abroad for their Dynamics team members? And how will the points-based visa work for them? So I can definitely answer the first portion of this question. So I know within the US in particular, and in the UK, a number of clients are hiring people to work remotely, even if it's kind of outside of Europe, to work on their projects, because there's no real need actually for a visa because they're doing the work from the country that they're in. It's just that the work is being done in the UK or the US or whatever it might be. In terms of the points-based visa work, I don't think that I can answer that. Is anyone else on the call, are you able to answer that question?
I am not, Chloe, unfortunately. It's a good question though. I mean, we can certainly come back to him on it. Yeah,
we will go do some research. We'll go to speak to people our side, and then we will definitely come back to you and send you an email with that. Are there any other questions from anyone? If not, we'll wrap this up. Okay, so it looks like we're not going to have any other questions. Thank you so much to everyone that joined us today. I hope you found this useful and informative. We have recorded this presentation so we can send it out after the fact. But I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Take care.